He's Henry Gomez, an advertising agency strategist with over 20 years of experience.
And he's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief. And together, we're the Brief Brothers, having an ongoing discussion about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising in general. Well, Howard, we're back again. Last time we were together, after we were done, we kept the camera rolling and you and I segued into an interesting conversation about when is a new creative brief required. And at the end of that conversation, we said, you know what, that's good material for another episode. So instead of re-recording it and trying to recapture that, I thought we would just splice in that discussion that we had, and that would be our episode for today, along with looking at some advertising from IKEA.
Sounds good to me. Let's take a look, Henry.
Okay, thank you, Howard.
Because one of the things that I encounter all the time is, should I write a creative brief for every project? And I say, absolutely not. You should write a creative brief for the major projects. And if you have a one-off 6 months down the line, write an addendum, write a work order based on the brief, but don't write a creative brief for every single project.
Absolutely. And a lot of times your brief from one year to the next is going to be similar to, because you did the research, you found out not that much has changed. Consumers don't change that. Yeah. Your position in the marketplace didn't change that much. Your strategy should still be stable, right? That's another issue in our industry, is the short-termism, is like we do something for 1 year, but brand building requires multiple years. So you have an expression of a campaign, and then you go back and you say, let's revisit the strategy and look at it and develop a new expression of this strategy.
That could be a topic for a discussion, like this short-term memory problem that we have in the advertising world.
We need a new brief every year. No, if you did the brief right, and we're talking about big brand initiatives, you're talking about brand advertising, your brief shouldn't change much from year to year. What should change is how you execute new ideas that are brought to the table to bring that brief to life, either influenced by where we've already been creatively, or by new blood coming into the creative teams, or new ways of thinking about things, developments in the marketplace. But the strategy itself, we throw strategy away after 12 months. And
yeah, well, it's like we throw taglines away when there's a new CMO.
So I was influenced very, very early in my career, even before I was doing strategy. I started in advertising in '96. And at that time, the internet was brand new. So there was no Wikipedia. There was no huge databases of information of everything in the world like there is now. There was the potential, but it wasn't really that. It was a bunch of disparate websites that you'd find through Yahoo or Ask Jeeves or whatever the search engines were, Lycos. And so I found this one website, and it was a very primitive early website, or mid 90s. And it was an agency creative, basically pontificating about advertising. And it always stayed with me, and 25 years later stays with me, is he talked about this problem of disposable advertising. It's like a company spends tens or hundreds of millions of dollars advertising a tagline. They have an agency review, and then first thing the new agency wants to do is get rid of it. It's like, but you've spent so much money inculcating that into people's minds, and now you're going to walk away from it. And there was some good thinking behind it. Maybe it needs to be refreshed. Maybe creatively you need to tackle it differently, but don't throw away what you've been. And we've had this conversation. Burger King keeps going back to have it your way, because that's what everybody associates with. Why would you spend money trying to change people's minds of have it your way when it's such a positive message that goes with the.
Another way of looking at it is from the creative perspective. Every time a creative brief is handed out to a team, let's say you have most agencies, maybe only, I don't know how many teams they have for a given project, but let's say there's 3 teams of art director and copywriters. Every brief produces 20 to 30 ideas per team. 1 idea is executed. 3 maybe are presented. Well, how many of those ideas are sitting in a drawer somewhere that still could be executed? And how many times have you brought back the same creative brief the next year and gave the same creative teams an opportunity to start over again? A year later, they're going to think differently about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I argue that in one of the briefs that I use in my book, it's for the BBC's coverage of the Olympics in 2012. That could be the creative brief for every Olympics coverage from now until the end of time, because it's going to be executed differently every time a creative team looks at it.
Absolutely. And the country where it's being hosted is going to play a part of it. And a lot of variables. The athletes who are likely to excel in that year's Olympics are going to change. The sports that are going to be important in that particular year are going to be different based on those high-level athletes that are the ones that get the most attention and press. So absolutely. I think we might be able to edit this little piece that we did just now, and that might be like part of an episode.
I think so. I think so, because the short-termism, the disposability of strategy as well as creative, these are things. I mean, it fits part and parcel with the whole ageism thing. If you're under 40, you're good. If you're over 40, you're out the door. It makes no sense.
Yep.
Okay, Henry, I sent you a link to some new creative from IKEA, and these are print and outdoor. And I want to get your take on it. I got some thoughts about this, but I think it would be kind of fun for our viewers if you and I took a slightly different tack. Instead of reviewing the creative, why don't we deconstruct it or reverse engineer it and see if we can figure out what the creative brief might have been. This is an exercise I take my workshop participants through. I know you do a little teaching about creative briefs as well. This might be something that you do. Let's do it for our viewers. The first question that I like to ask when I do a brief is, what's the problem that we're trying to solve here? So looking at these examples of creative from IKEA, what's your take on what the problem is that they felt they had to solve with this?
Well, I think that they're selling bed linens, right? So I think that they're trying to associate, and IKEA is a store that's obviously has a lot of different things that you can get there. Furniture, appliances. It's a big box store that has a wide variety of everything down to like kitchen gadgets. And so I think that the purpose of this campaign was to emphasize their bed linens and their bedding department, and give it a little bit of a push. And so I thought that the way they did it was very clever. And again, we're not really reviewing the creative, although it's in communication art, and it's because it's notable, because it's very breakthrough, right? Like the visuals are very arresting. So the execution is very well done. But it is an obvious push to associate IKEA more as a place where you get bed linens. Maybe they have research that says that people don't associate IKEA as highly for bed linens as they do for other categories.
Or take it a step further, and the perception that they're trying to overcome is that they are run-of-the-mill bed linens. But actually, these bed linens are of high quality, and you will in fact get better sleep if you use them. That might be the insight that they've uncovered. There's more to our bed linens than you ever thought.
Absolutely. I think that if we look at deconstruct the ads, they're basically saying, memory, energy, even your aging largely depends on something that you're probably neglecting, which is your sleep. And if you want to get better sleep, come to IKEA, because we have the bed linens that are going to help you to achieve that. So all of that is kind of like the strategy, right? Like in the brief somewhere that's not phrased elegantly, but is phrased elegantly in these beautiful posters that we're seeing.
So let's pose this question for our audience. What do you think the single-minded proposition would be? If you have a thought on that, reach out to us through our websites, and if we like some of the things that you've suggested, we'll let you know in a future episode. Okay, Henry.
Great, excellent, Howard. Thank you. He's Howard Eibach.
And he's Henry Gomez, and together we're the Brief Brothers. See you next time.
Next time.